scenario recently where they were part of conflict, and this is a great example. So yeah, take it away.
Well, I remember a scenario that's so recent, it was this morning during our staff meeting. We are designing a new certification and licensing process for large companies that want to deploy our compassion accountability tools in their company. So we were having a brainstorming session about how to design this certification to be appropriate for our customers. And at one point in the conversation, I really was starting to get anxious about where it was going because I thought we were getting off track, we were not using our time well, and we didn't seem to be getting where I wanted to go. So there we go. There's a gap between what I wanted and what I was experiencing. I was having an emotional response to that. So instead of saying something like, we need to get back on track, or that's not what we should be working on, what I said was, I'm feeling anxious and uncomfortable because I'm experiencing a gap between where I thought we were going to go with this conversation and where it is right now. Then I went to R and I said, here's what I'm seeing. Here's the things that we had outlined that we were going to accomplish today. So that's the gap I'm seeing. And I'm willing to hear where you guys are at on that. Then I went to P at persistence and I said, ultimately what this is about is us maintaining the integrity of our model while serving the needs of the customer. We have to reconcile those two. That's why I'm anxious right now. And I turned it back to the group and said, I'm curious where y'all are at with this conversation.
And so what was the mood of the room when you walk through that way? What's staring back at you as opposed to all this tension?
It's tough. There's still tension because I'm doing conflict. I'm calling a gap. I'm laying out the gap and I'm calling it. But I'm not calling out people. I'm not intimidating people. I'm basically saying there's a gap. I'm not feeling good. I want to feel differently about it. Where are you at? And I got interesting responses. One person said, man, I'm so glad to hear that because I was unaware of how you were feeling. Another person said, oh man, yeah, here's some information that I didn't share that would be really relevant to this from what we heard from a customer the other day. And then someone else said, I really respect where you're going, Nate. Thank you for keeping us on track so that we're using our time well. All right. Great responses.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Now, I said they're all great responses. They're not comfortable. The point here is not to make the conflict go away. The point is to use the conflict to generate really good outcomes.
Right. But while there is tension, it doesn't have to be unhealthy tension. Tension's good.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
and that's what compassion accountability is we can walk into the field of conflict in a spirit of I'm okay and you're okay, and we're not here to hurt each other or to win or lose. We're here to struggle together to create something.
All right, I want to flip this a little bit to something that a lot of our audience will find very relevant, and that is give us at least a scenario where we can walk through that compassion cycle with a client. So a client's upset. And there's a big thing of conflict, right? You screwed me and blah, 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 and they're already feeling offended and bothered, and we've got to manage that. You don't just walk away from that conflict. You don't want to bow up. So how do you handle an unruly, or not even unruly, let's say that they're legitimately wronged and they want answers?
Those are such good questions and so relevant because how often is the customer or the client, there's a gap between what they wanted and what they actually experienced from us. Or maybe it's the other way around. But either way, there's a gap and they're upset. And man, how relevant. I'm so glad you brought it up because just yesterday we were dealing with an upset client. And the day before I was counseling school administrators on how to deal with really angry parents. So the very first thing to remember is it's not personal. Even though people try to make it personal, it's not personal, but that doesn't mean that it's not emotional. And so the very first thing is to validate and affirm and acknowledge the importance of how they're feeling. And you can do that without saying they're right or wrong or admitting defeat or whatever. You know how often when there's a problem, our attorneys or our HR people say, hey, don't say anything. Don't admit you did anything wrong. Just get quiet. When what we really need to be doing is saying, man, I can imagine how upset you are. I wouldn't want to feel like that. Or, gosh, you're really angry. So the first thing to do at Open is validate and affirm the feeling. There's nothing wrong with it. The second thing is to go to Resourceful then and offer to be a resource and get curious. And it may be a question like something like, man, I'd really like to learn what's going on so I can understand the trouble you're experiencing. And then P persistence, a lot of companies come at persistence right off the bat by saying, well, here's our non-negotiables, and sir, what you need to understand is you can't do this, or here's our rules, or here's our policies. What if we waited on that, and the first time around the compassion cycle, instead we focused on our commitments to them, like, I promise to stay on the phone with you until we get this worked out, or you can count on me to take whatever you share to somebody in our organization that can do something about it. And so it may sound something like this. And let's say I call in because my computer's all messed up, and the person on the other end says, man, I can see how upset you were. I would hate having a lot of work to do and not be able to get my computer or my internet to work. How about we do a little problem solving, and I'm going to ask you some questions and see if we can't get to the bottom of this. But sir, I do want to promise you I'm going to stay on the phone and stay with you until we get this solved. How's that sound?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, all of a sudden there's some empathy there, you know?
Well, yeah, and angry customers that just want to feel heard. Very often their requests are irrational. Very often they are wrong. The customer is not always right, but their feelings are legitimate. And they would prefer that we struggle together towards the solution than for it to be an adversarial process. So with ORPO, we call it, around the compassion cycle, we can quickly transform that adversarial into a, hey, we're on your side here, and we're going to help get to a solution that's going to help you feel better.